This is Liberty Under Attack Radio, hosted by Shane and Matt. Your place for documented truth and where freedom is the only agenda. We must end the terror war.
Abandon hope and forget what you know. This is the land of
everything you think you know is upside down, backwards, and inside out. What has to take the cake, the height of your insanity, is the fact that you view as violent terrorists the only people on the planet who oppose the initiation of violence against their fellow men. Anarchists, voluntarists, and libertarians. We use violence only to defend ourselves against someone who initiates violence against us. We use it for nothing else. Meanwhile, your belief system is completely schizophrenic and self-contradictory. On the one hand, you teach the young slaves that violence is never the answer. Yet out of the side of your mouths, you advocate that everyone and everything, everywhere and at all times, be controlled, monitored, taxed, and regulated through the force of government. In short, you are teaching your children that the masters may use violence whenever they please, but the slaves should never resist. You indoctrinate your children into a life of unthinking, helpless subservience. You are putting the chains around their little necks and fastening the locks tight. And the worst of all, you feel good about it. That was a short excerpt from Larkin Rose's book, The Iron Web, from page 335. Good evening, and welcome to another edition of Liberty Under Attack Radio. I'm your host, Shane, and as always, we hope you've had a pleasant Sunday. If you heard the Bill Cooper broadcast I selected last week, I hope you enjoyed it and found it as timely as I did. Well, except for the last segment or so of Bill discussing shortwave radios, that wasn't timely, but the rest of it definitely was. On that note, I apologize for my absence, but I was on a much-needed vacation after a busy, quite hellish past month, to tell you the truth. Yesterday, we had a visitor to the Liberty Under Attack website, and I just wanted to make sure we provide him or her with a sufficient welcome. The visitor we had was from the Department of Injustice, and they were here for over 10 minutes. So, sir or madam, I can only hope that for once in your life you're provided with a quality education. We surely welcome you back anytime you want. Oh yeah, and quit your job. As always, there are updates I'd like to mention before we move forward. Things definitely haven't slowed down, and I've completed 2 more articles for a series titled Adventures in Illinois Law, Draconian Legislation at the County Level. For those who are unaware, I attended the McLean County Board meeting on May 19th and was able to come out with 2 articles in relation to it. Part 1 explains my adventures at the meeting, and Part 2 discusses the McLean County Action Plan, which is a reform to a prior reform in an attempt to curb the drug problem. The Adventures in Illinois Law series is, in my opinion, extremely important. We always hear about the tyrannical federal government, but no one really even considers the actions of local government. That was my goal through this series, to show people the rampant corruption that exists even at the local level, and also to give me firsthand experience of the statism here locally. As of right now, there is one more edition planned, and that will be that'll be of my experiences sitting in on a criminal court proceeding as a spectator when I get around to doing that. I understand that I already sort of did that with the jury summons and felony scratching incidents, but it will be a different perspective just being a spectator and not being forced by government to be there. For all of those articles, go to libertyunderattack.com/LUA-news.html. These spoken discourses are also available for all of those. The next important thing to mention is that the Court Documents Archive has expanded quite a bit in the last week. We have obtained quite a few more documents for Charles Dyer and have expanded into the Free State Project, more specifically Ian Bernard. Ross Ulbricht's court documents have recently been added as well. I'm sure all of you have heard that he is sentenced to life in prison with no possibility for parole for victimless crimes. All of those documents are available for easy download in PDF format, and we definitely recommend copies to be in as many places as humanly possible. You can find that archive at libertyunderattack.com/court-documents.html. The final archive I'd like to mention in passing is the profiling archive. As of right now, it is completed. Every once in a while, something is added to the solutions page, but those will be the only updates that we foresee. I also think it'd be beneficial to let you know what to expect in the next few broadcasts of Liberty Under Attack Radio. Tonight, we'll be joined by Kyle Rearden to discuss the fourth branch of government, known as the administrative agencies, which will be an introduction for the broadcast on June 14th, where Kyle, Matt, and I will prove that America is a police state. On June 7th, we'll be joined by Cal Molinay, an anarchist from Liberate RVA, and I'm definitely excited for that one. Cal's an interesting dude and is doing his part in teaching people the immorality of government, and also provides much better alternatives than the violent monopoly that we currently have. Those are all the updates for now, but make sure to stay updated by liking Liberty Under Attack on Facebook, as well as by subscribing to the YouTube channel. Many people have hypothesized over the years that there is a shadow government, and some of their conjecture has been proven incorrect time and time again. However, what can be proven is the existence and daily functions of the unconstitutional bureaucracy that have been described as the fourth branch of government. That'll be the subject of this evening's broadcast. I'd like to begin with a quote from Thomas Jefferson's Declaration to get us started. Quote, "He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance." End quote. Kyle, I'd like to welcome you back to Liberty Under Attack Radio. How are you doing this evening?
Doing quite well. It's a pleasure to be with you again.
And it's definitely a pleasure to have you back on. That quote by Jefferson is surely an accurate definition of these administrative agencies that we'll be discussing tonight. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely, without a doubt.
Okay. So where are we going to start this evening, Kyle?
Well, I guess probably the best place to start is with a little bit of a disclaimer of sorts, just so that there are no misunderstandings later in the future, considering that what we're going to be talking about tonight is mainly something of a legal nature. I am not a bar attorney, and I do not practice law without a license. What I do is I read law because of the legal maxim the government likes to presume or otherwise enforce upon the citizenry, that of ignorantia juris non excusat. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. So in good faith, I am trying to understand the law, their monopoly government law that they are coercing upon me and everyone else. And in that attempt to do so, one of the things I have learned from definitely the patriot community, at least, is these administrative agencies, which is really the topic for tonight, and is rather a rarely mentioned phenomenon that needs to be mentioned more often if we're going to understand exactly the nature of our common grievances against the government, regardless of whatever the specific issue at the moment is. Yeah,
and I will say myself, in my few years of research, I have not come across the administrative agencies. Well, obviously I've come across them, but I've never taken a deep look at what we're going to be looking at tonight. And I don't think a lot of other people have either. That's why I think this is going to be a beneficial broadcast. So I think a good place to start, I think, would be with the congressional record of March 12th, 1946, and Senator Pat McCarran's statements.
Sure. So according to that congressional record in 1946, like you said, Senator McCarran said in support of the Administrative Procedure Act, quote, "We," meaning the Congress, "we have set up a fourth order in the tripartite plan of government which was initiated by the founding fathers of our democracy. They set up the executive, the legislative, and the judicial branches. But since that time, we have set up a fourth dimension, if I may so term it, which is now popularly known as administrative in nature. So we have the legislative, the executive, the judicial, and the administrative," close quote. So that's what McCarran said. He also went on to say the following, quote, "Perhaps there are reasons for that arrangement. We again meaning the Congress, we found that the legislative branch, although it might enact law, could not very well administer it. So the legislative branch enunciated legal precepts and ordained that commissions or groups should be established by the executive branch with power to promulgate rules and regulations. These rules and regulations are the very things that impinge upon, curb, or permit a citizen who is touched by the law, as every citizen of this democracy is," close quote. So that's what Senator Pat McCarran said about the establishment of these administrative agencies following the end of the Second World War.
So I guess that would be the proof that the fourth branch of government does exist. That would definitely be proof.
Well, there's more proof, but yeah, that's definitely the starting point.
Starting
So
point. Yep. And
yeah,
from what McCarran stated, he believed that this Administrative Procedure Act was sort of a quote, a bill of rights for the hundreds of thousands of Americans whose affairs are controlled or regulated, end quote. Now, maybe they had good intentions. I don't think they did, but just look at the result today. We have every single thing we do is regulated, and most of it is done by unconstitutional administrative agencies.
well, yeah, and I think the main question here involves the separation of powers. You see, I don't remember reading anything from the federal constitution anywhere where one branch of government can just unilaterally set up a brand new branch of government just all by its lonesome. You know, I'm no legal scholar, but just as someone who graduated from college, I would like to think that perhaps that would require a constitutional amendment or something pretty profound to fundamentally alter or otherwise add on to the government a brand new branch. So here's what I'm getting at here. The administrative agencies, even before they go and do anything, by virtue of the fact that they are recognized in law, so-called, in law, they are an unconstitutional bureaucracy. Okay, so just right out of the gate, before anyone is hired, before there are budgets that are allocated, before weapons are being bought, at least in the case of some of them anyway, or perhaps all. I don't know. I'm considering the police militarization. Maybe they all do now. That someone else would have to follow up on that. But before they go do anything, whether it's with paperwork or SWAT teams, they are an unconstitutional bureaucracy, period. Now, having said that, now we can spend the rest of the time basically going through the 20 million different details of how they're all put together.
Yeah, I think it's important to mention as well that any law that's unconstitutional is null and void, which would mean that so their existence itself is unconstitutional. Therefore, these rules and regulations that we're all that have been foisted upon us are also obviously unconstitutional. I think that's a good point. Color of law, much, right?
Yeah, it might as well be. But unfortunately, when you're dealing with legalese, the twisting of language and such can make life quite hard. And unfortunately, it's not like the government schools are very keen on teaching the students that are stuck there because of truancy laws. By the way, here's how to defend yourself in court whenever a bureaucrat tries to harass you. So I think one role of the alternative media is definitely to provide something resembling a remedial education, which hopefully is a little bit of what we're going to do here tonight, at least in terms of a very introductory overview. Just like, oh, by the way, here's a real grievance. Here's how the government's enforcing a lot of this stuff, whether it was their attempts at trying to, like last year in Nevada, BLM trying to rustle the cattle, and then of course people respond to that with the cattle at rustling. But of course the question is that, well, wait a minute, how was BLM able to do that in the first place? Well, they're an administrative agency. But anyway, in terms of the administrative agencies and how did all this come about, we really have to look at the fact that with the ratification of the 14th Amendment in 1868, this might not come across softly on certain ears, but it needs to be said, and I have said it publicly before. There are two classes of American citizenship. By that I mean that not only are there United States citizens, also known as citizens of the United States, there are also citizens of the several states, or probably a little bit more simply, state citizens. So there is something called state citizenship. And there are different proofs of this. There is the comity clause in the federal constitution where it mentions about the citizens of the several states. There is also how shall I say, the federal style manual, which actually says that in the law, whenever referring to citizens of the several states, here's how we describe it. And they say,